Who is the leader in higher education? A presentation by Alex Petrone. My goals in this presentation are to compare the American higher education system to that of the foreign nations around the world, to present the problems the American higher education system is currently encountering, and also to display why higher education around the world has improved drastically compared to that of the United States, and why nations such as South Korea have overtaken the U.S. in terms of higher education. For many years, the United States has been the clear leader in education. Many believe this is still true, but this is mainly attributed to the fact that we have 51 universities in the top 100 of the world rankings. We have more money being donated and given to research than any other nation. We have many varying programs and courses of study that are offered at various universities around our nation. Then this has allowed for any field to be studied that you could possibly imagine. And we also create well-rounded individuals that are educated in all fields, not just their field of study. But even with all these characteristics, I still feel that higher education in America is no longer the leader in higher education. And this graph shows why. It's a graph of the amount of associate degrees and higher obtained by 24 to 35-year-olds in our societies and societies around the world of other nations. Out of the 26 qualifying nations, the United States ranks 12th on this graph, as you can see right here, this highlighted blue bar, with only 41.6 people in this age bracket receiving a degree of at least the associate level. The goal of the United States is 55%, shown by this blue line, and we are not close to obtaining this, while leading nations such as Korea, Canada, Russia, and Japan are the only four nations to reach this goal that we have set for ourselves. And Korea, as the leader, totals 57.9% of people in this age bracket receiving a degree of at least the associate level. And this is going to be a major problem for our nation, as I will show in a couple of seconds. So first I want to show the higher education system in the United States and what it's all about. Our average tuition for four-year universities is roughly around $22,000 per year. It's a very high annual tuition fee compared to other nations around the world. And these fees are instituted at 629 public universities around our nation, as well as 1,845 private institutions. And just two stats. One is the 41.6% of all young Americans between the ages of 25 and 34 have at least an associate degree, as I showed on that graph. And also 42% of all Americans ages 25 to 64 years old have reached at least a higher educational level. So as you can see, those age brackets have about the same amount of people that have received a degree. Now I want to compare this to higher education in what I feel is the most prominent nation in the world education right now, South Korea. In South Korea, unlike America, tuition fees are being cut, and as they're being cut almost 4.5% annually. And this has resulted in tuition currently equaling about 6,000 US dollars, much less than the American tuition. And public universities are much more prominent in foreign nations, especially nations such as South Korea. This allows for cheaper education, as you know, state schools in America are a much more affordable and viable option to high private universities that charge through the roof for their education. And also in South Korea, there's a continuous focus on research. And with this research focus, there's been impressive amounts of government funding contributed to it, and also a focus around the nation on science and technology rather than the liberal arts fields. So why are so many nations more successful currently in higher education than we are as the United States? It's because these nations have fewer private universities. As I mentioned earlier, public universities offer a much more affordable route of education, and there's less of a focus on prestige and promise and high educational fees. Instead, there is a much larger focus on producing a cheaper and affordable education, and this education is also more affordable through subsidies, which are given to colleges, just as they are in America. But in foreign nations, they don't have college athletics. There's no liberal arts programs, no outside of the classroom clubs and activities. So all subsidies go to improving educational standards, and this allows for direct funding right to the educational system. And because of this, we have a college affordability crisis in America, which we've talked about in class, and this is where the rapid increase of tuition fees has resulted in less participation in higher education because many students are not able to take advantage of this opportunity. So where is college most affordable? Out of the 11 countries that rank higher than us that were shown on that graph about of 25 to 34-year-olds with college degrees, 8 of those nations ahead of us offer a more affordable college education. And this can be calculated by taking the affordability rate, which is equal to the educational cost of a given nation, divided that by that nation's median income. So our affordability rate in America is 51.34%, which is pretty high compared to most of the nations that offer similar educational standards to us. As you can see, 8 nations, including Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Korea, Canada, Denmark, Belgium, and Israel, offer cheaper educations, with nations such as Norway and Belgium having affordability rates of as low as 2.24%, so much more affordable than an American education. So how does all this relate to Econ 155? It shows how the college affordability crisis has hurt the American educational system. College affordability crisis is in the title of our course, Econ 155. It's what our textbook is about. It's always talked about in class, and it basically states that with the increased tuition in America, we are going to have fewer students taking advantage of the educational system, and this will result in fewer degrees, and this is why we are ranked 12th on that graph, in my opinion, compared and do not produce as many degrees as other nations in Asia and Europe. So I have another graph here, and this shows the effect the college affordability crisis has had on our nation. The light blue bars are signify degrees amongst 55 to 64-year-olds, while the dark blue bars signify are basically a repeat of what my other graph was, and it's the degrees amongst 25 to 34-year-olds. And as you can see, United States, the 2 bars are roughly about equal, around 42%, as I said with the previous statistics. But if you look at the more prominent nations currently in education, such as Korea, they have a much larger difference and a much larger increase in degrees amongst 25 to 34-year-olds compared to 55 to 64-year-olds, as Korea goes from 15% all the way up to 65%. And this shows improvement in their educational system that we have lacked. So, as I said, that graph basically, bottom line, shows our failure to improve our educational system. As in this 30-year span between the 2 age brackets, the same amount of people are acquiring an education and a degree from our universities. You would think over time we would improve this rate and the statistic would be much more impressive, but in 30 years we basically have not improved our educational system in any way. When you compare this to nations such as South Korea, Canada, Japan, Russia, they have much greater leaps in the amount of degrees between the 2 age brackets that were in that graph. And this shows the improvement in their focus towards education, their funding for education, and their overall quality of education. Meanwhile, it also shows that they should now be considered the most prominent leaders in higher education and the fight for the lead of higher education. So how can we regain our dominance? Lower tuition costs to allow for more students, generate as much government funding as possible, increase our attention to higher education to levels of other countries, and continue to improve all levels of our higher educational system, not just the colleges and universities in our nation. And that's